You all know the story about how two idealistic teenagers in the 1930s created a science fiction hero that spawned an industry. Jerry and Joe, in a flash of brilliance, gave the world an icon. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, he was a hero the likes of which the world had never seen before. Or was he? Let's take a look at the men before Superman.
Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
There are few science fiction aficionados not familiar with Lester Dent's creation, Doc Savage. When comparing Savage and Superman, it doesn't require much of a stretch to see the resemblance between the Man of Bronze and the Man of Steel. Both had keen minds, both were named Clark. Both had a fortress of solitude, Savage's in the Arctic and Superman's in the Antarctic. Dent's Savage was even publicized as being a Superman in the house ads promoting the tales. Published in the early to mid-1930s, it is readily admitted that Doc Savage was a strong influence on the teenage Siegel and Shuster when they created The Last Son of Krypton. There was, however, another champion to contend with, an older one who was a lot closer to being Superman than Clark Savage ever was. Meet Hugo Danner. He can leap 40 feet into the air. He can bend steel in his bare hands. Nothing short of a bursting shell can penetrate his invulnerable skin. Sound familiar? Danner was the protagonist of Philip Wiley's science fiction novel Gladiator. The product of a super soldier serum developed by his father, Abednego Danner, Hugo stood alone in a world of normal human beings, a victim of abilities and appetites that exceeded those of his so-called peers. Women flocked to him. Men feared him. There were, to be sure, certain differences between Hugo Danner and Kal-El of Krypton. For one, Danner never had qualms about taking a life in battle. He also never felt compelled to disguise himself behind a flashy costume. Wiley's Gladiator was published in 1930, predating the 1933 debut of Doc Savage and the 1938 unveiling of Superman in Action Comics number 1. So it would seem that it was Philip Wiley who invented the superhero, and not Siegel and Shuster. But if either Dent or Wiley had intentions on patenting the concept of the superhero, they'd quickly find that it was neither of them. Somebody had already been there, nearly 20 years before. My effort carried me fully 30 feet into the air and landed me 100 feet from my pursuers and on the opposite side of the enclosure. With these words, Edgar Rice Burroughs, writing as Norman Bean in 1912 for All Story magazine, described the first of several superhuman feats that his character, John Carter, would perform in his serialized novella, A Princess of Mars. A character even more like Kal-El than Wiley's Gladiator, John Carter was a gentleman of Virginia who found himself the only one of his kind on an alien planet, upon which he soon discovered he possessed powers and abilities far beyond those of normal Martians. The reason? While the Martians are immense, their bones are very large, and they are muscled only in proportion to the gravitation which they must overcome. The result is that they are infinitely less agile and less powerful in proportion to their weight than an Earthman, and I doubt that there were one of them to be transported to Earth, he could lift his own weight from the ground. In fact, I am convinced that he could not do so. Burroughs' explanation sounds quite similar to the reasons given for Superman's enhanced strength, and why he could leap a tall building in a single bound. This was back in the days before the Man of Steel learned to fly. John Carter would go on to star in 9 more Martian novels, thrilling readers with his bravery, his daring, and his ability to unite warring races through his philosophy of fighting when he was forced to, but otherwise treating people and creatures with dignity, love, and respect, concepts foreign to many of the Martian tribes. Of course, the concept of the Superman is even older than this. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche coined the word Superman, or Overman depending on the translation, in his work Thus Spoke Zarathustra, back around 1884. Unlike the heroes previously mentioned, however, Nietzsche's Superman would be a creature of complete selfishness, finding ascension to the status of man-god by abhorring the ways of altruism and embracing insatiable lusts for power as a motivation for rising above and over humanity. We could, of course, explore the Superman archetype further, bringing up such distinctly American icons as Paul Bunyan and John Henry. Further literary archaeology would land us in the antiquity of Greco-Roman mythology and the tales of Hercules, or in Judeo-Christianity and the story of Samson and Delilah. Of particular interest to our expedition would be the tale of Gilgamesh, a man who possessed so much strength and power as to be utterly alone in the world, without peer, until one day he finds a brother who can match him. Tragically, Gilgamesh loses his brother prematurely, a tale that would echo down through the millennia to be repeated again in the Superman mythos, in the tale of Superboy and Mon-El. Ironically, it was Dell, Gold Key, and Marvel Comics, DC's competitors, that succeeded in bringing these Superman forerunners into the four-color realm of comic books. Doc Savage and John Carter both had an ongoing series, while Hugo Danner was featured in an issue of Marvel Preview number 9 under the title Man God. DC eventually managed to get their hands on Doc Savage for a while, but the series lacked a certain je ne sais quoi, and the series was canceled after 24 issues. They also wedged Hugo Danner into the DC universe, making him the absentee father of the Young All-Stars strongman Iron Monroe in Roy and Dan Thomas's liberal adaptation of Wiley's novel Young All-Stars number 10 and 11. So one might say that the Man of Tomorrow is really just the Man of Yesterday, in a shiny new package, a modern retelling of the tales inspired by the countless authors of the past. One might. But that would only examine one side of the equation. For inside Jerry and Joe's spandex-clad mystery man existed a unique atom of creativity, an atom that, once exposed, rapidly split and continued splitting, spawning Superman after Superman, each inexorably linked to the Kryptonian, yet each uniquely different. And one day, who knows? Perhaps there will come a new generation with a new Superman, and readers and scholars alike might discuss how that character is but an extension of all the ancient archetypes of Gilgamesh, of Hercules, of John Carter, Hugo Danner and Doc Savage, and of Superman. Hi, thanks for stopping by for another Critical Blast video. The internet is a big place, and we know there are lots of other places you could be other than here, and we appreciate you being here immensely. If you enjoyed this kind of content, we hope you'll return for more. If you click the subscribe button, you'll get a little notification of when we produce new video content. If you would like to help the channel out, there are many ways to do so. Just visiting our main hub, criticalblast.com, will do wonders. But if you're more of a show me the merchandise type of person, there are links in the description of this video to our t-shirt shop, as well as links to Amazon for the books we publish under the Critical Blast Publishing imprint, including the urban fantasy anthology Gods and Services and the YA superhero novel Bulletproof by Stephen J. Mitchell. Thanks again for visiting this video. We hope you had a blast.